Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another spooky storytelling night on None the Lesser, the podcast normally dedicated to interviews with those that create art, music, and stories and whatnot that is currently on a tangent of spooky stuff. So, this is your host, Cody Buchanan, and my guest host, Emily Buchanan, is not going to be attending tonight's reading. She's just a little too busy with her commissions right now, so I can't expect that much of her. But you'll have a good time still, I promise. We're going to get to know each other very well, and what better way to do that than feeling scared together. We're going to jump right in with this first one, which was found on R Paranormal by user D1M80276. And the title is No Arms or Legs. When I was about 9 years old, I lived in a 1930s built apartment/flat. I had lived there since I was a baby with my mom, dad, and disabled little brother. My bedroom in the house was down a long corridor that had no windows, so was always dark. As a child, I was always very scared of being alone in that corridor, and would run the length as quickly as possible to get to the front room in what I felt was safety. Around the age of 9, I was getting a lot of pushing from my parents to go to bed on my own, as until that point, my dad would lay with me till I fell asleep, then leave. About the time I started to go to sleep on my own, I started to have reoccurring dreams about waking up in the night with an old man with no arms and no legs hovering above the bottom of my bed. I didn't tell anyone and instead would creep into the kitchen with my blanket and pillow and sleep there till morning. I did this to avoid the old man. Every morning my parents would find me and yell at me for sleeping in the kitchen, but I refused to speak to anyone about my reasons. I continued to experience the same nightly encounter with the old man with no arms or legs. Over time I started to make out more and more about him and his features. The man was in his 60s, at least he looked. He was round and plump. His bald head had aged spots and moles on it. The man never talked, but always looked at me without blinking. After multiple encounters, I could see that the man's arms and legs were stumps, rounded at the end, as if they had been taken from him a long time ago. One of the strangest things about the whole experience was the musty, damp smell I would get in my nose when he appeared. A year and a bit of almost nightly encounters would start to gradually, over time, become once a week and then once a month until it was once every so often with no pattern or frequency. I turned 13 on the day we moved house and never had that experience again, but sometimes recalled it. Over time, the memory faded until years later, and me being 26 and my daughter now 2, went to stay at my mom's house, as I do every Sunday. I got to talking about sleepless nights with my daughter, and my mom recalled the memories of me sleeping on the kitchen floor. I explained that I was having dreams about the old man with no arms and no legs. My mom's face dropped as I recalled my experiences with the old man. I first thought this look was due to finally understanding her son's childhood distress, but I was wrong. So very, very wrong. My mom explained that the previous tenant was in fact an old man who had his arms and legs taken due to infections from diabetes. My mom had lived there her whole life in that area and seen this man many times. From my description, my mom said that I had described him perfectly. I was horrified, but my mom continued and said that sometimes in the night she would wake up to a musty old smell that she could only smell at night and would be gone in the morning. My mom shrugged the smell off as being something to do with the drains and other things that helped explain it. My mom also explained how she would come into my room in the morning to find things moved around, but resolved that it was due to a sleepless child playing with toys at night. I never played with toys at night. I pulled the covers over my head, made a breathing hole, and waited, scared, alone, and tired, as I waited for that old man to come. And yeah, that one was really creepy. I don't like that one. I don't like the idea of some ballooned out old man with no legs or arms just hovering at the foot of a kid's bed. I don't like that even in my bed. I don't want that in my bed. I don't like old armless, legless men that are dead floating over beds. I don't like that. Thanks for the story, though. Creepy as all get out. This next one was found on The Truth Is Here, posted by Wendigo VD. It's like Wendigo, but dingo. This one is titled, I Think I Saw a Siren in Biscayne Bay, which Biscayne Bay appears to be off the coast of Miami. Unless this is a different Biscayne Bay, that is where we're going to say this story takes place. So, some background information. This is where the story begins. Every week or so, I go sailing in Biscayne Bay with my friends for a school program. Yesterday, I was sailing on a small one-person boat in Biscayne Bay. When I started to go a bit further than my friends, not a big deal, I do that a lot. I started to sail out to the middle of the bay, and I thought I saw a coconut floating in the water. It was about 3 miles out, so it was weird that there were coconuts floating there. I dismissed it until it raised a hand. I looked closer, and it was a person. I panicked, and I thought someone was drowning. I frantically tried to bring my boat closer when the person swam to me unnaturally fast. They swam like 100 feet in 5 seconds, give or take. The person tried to speak to me, and that's when I saw its tail. It was weird, not like a mermaid's tail in books or movies, but covered in grime and mildew, algae. I was so scared and immediately sailed back to shore. While I was sailing back, I heard ethereal singing, unlike anything I ever heard. I got to the shore and I didn't tell anyone what I had seen or heard. And this is a short one, but the edit is where it gets hella creepy. I don't like this edit. Edit. Around 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I was taking a shower because I just got out of PE. That's physical education, gym class. Anyway, near the end of my shower, I heard the same singing that I heard 2 days ago. It was the same pitch and volume, but it wasn't in the ocean. I was just in the shower. Naturally, I freaked out and ran out of the shower. As soon as I was out, it stopped. I think it was singing through the plumbing or something. It was very creepy, and I felt this sense of dread when it started singing. And there's some additional notes about the map of where this kind of all takes place, and some more theories on mermaids and sirens. And this one, just as a story, I don't like it. The movie It. Pennywise talking through the drains. Original It, the remake doesn't matter. I hate that. It makes me paranoid as all hell to shower or shave or whatever. I still do it. I still shower. I don't stink, but I am still spooked at the thought of somebody trying to talk to me through the drain. So, yeah, the comments on this one, though, is where, and the comments on all these are really good, but some of them stand out more than others. And in this one, it's really interesting. If you don't know the mythology behind sirens, they're basically mermaids or similar. Sometimes, with the fish like tail. But they have been told, many stories of them have been told of them attracting sailors to their death with a haunting song. Sometimes they've been depicted as being very attractive. Sometimes they've been depicted as being grotesque, but it's the song that attracts the sailor. A lot of people in the comments were talking about this and saying, "Hey, how'd you break free of the song? Like, you're not. Nobody's broken free of the siren song, or maybe they have. What did you do different?" Definitely makes me even more creeped out. I always thought I'd like to sail someday. Maybe, I don't know, retirement hobby. It's expensive, so I probably won't do it. But, I wouldn't do it anywhere but fresh water. Living in Michigan makes that very accessible, but I don't know. I'm not really craving it anymore. Another thing about the siren story, not this story in particular, but there's theories that the mad sailor at sea who believes they see a siren or hears a call from the ocean is due to drinking seawater, which is known to drive people mad because it enhances your dehydration, makes your dehydration much worse. So another theory for all the mythological tales of sirens and mermaids. Could be true. There's a whole lot of ocean out there. Who knows? This next one is from Our Paranormal by Robin Quigg. Username Robin Quigg. The title is Christmas Day Baby Teeth. Hi, all. I'm kind of new to Reddit, but I just noticed this sub and thought I'd share an experience that happened to me a few years back that I absolutely can't explain. Just in case somebody has any ideas or if anyone has had something similar happen to them. It's pretty much the only thing of this nature that has happened to me before. It was the evening on Christmas Day, maybe 2012, I'm not sure. I'm around 16 or 17, and my mom and I are driving back from a Christmas Day party with extended family in Greater London. Me and my mom lived alone with our dog, Pika. We are just chatting away about Christmas when the conversation moved to Santa Claus. And then we started talking about other mythical holiday creatures and characters, such as the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. We talked for a while about how when I was young, my mom used to put my baby teeth in a small jar with a blue fairy on top. Very similar to this one, and it's a link to a picture of a little tooth fairy jar. And I always remembered this jar from my childhood, but hadn't seen it for many years. I remember the last time I had seen it, it was partly wrapped in black duct tape, obviously to stop it from falling open. And if I had to estimate when this was, I would say several years before this conversation. Probably around the time we were moving house and were packing, around 2007. Yada, yada. We spoke for a while about baby teeth and this jar. My mom also stated that she hadn't seen it in a long time and hoped it wasn't lost during the process of our house move. I remember even saying that I thought it was a bit gross that my mom had kept all these teeth in the first place and that they were just sitting in the house somewhere. Anyway, this conversation went on for a little while, and then we moved on to talking about something else. We arrived home shortly after, walked in the front door, greeted by our dog, Pika, as usual. My mom walks into the kitchen, and I follow immediately behind her. And there on the floor of the kitchen is the small jar, opened in two pieces, and all these tiny baby teeth all over the floor. My first reaction was to think that my mom was trying to spook me, although she was literally never played a prank on me in my whole life. But then I saw her face and realized she definitely wasn't. She immediately freaks out and starts ringing everyone she knows to tell them what has happened. My dog, Pika, was pretty old at that point, maybe 11 years, and was very docile when we'd leave the house. She literally would never go rummaging through belongings or anything like that. It wouldn't really be possible anyway, as most stuff is kept in drawers, cupboards, and places that she can't get to. Weird, right? I still don't have an explanation for it, but my mom has a fair few unexplainable/weird stories about things that have happened to her before I was born, and although I knew she was never lying to me, I was always a little skeptical about the circumstances and thought maybe she'd missed something which could logically explain her experiences. Then, when this happened, I thought, oh shit, maybe she's right. Because I literally can't explain this. Laugh out loud. This one's not particularly like a jump scare by any means, but it's pretty creepy, right? Especially because it's this object centered around what I would agree with OP on original poster on. It's kind of gross. Collecting, baby teeth. I mean, I've got a daughter now. Maybe, I don't know. Hey, this is Cody from the present, interrupting Cody from the past to tell you that actually, one reason why someone might collect baby teeth is because down the road, the stem cells in the teeth can be used to help a child fight off certain cancers or other health issues. So maybe that's why. Probably going to keep some of my daughter's teeth now. All right, back to the spooky. Yeah, just talking about something and then it shows up. We have experiences like that sometimes. All of us do, where you're not thinking about something for years and years and then it suddenly shows up. Or you're sitting there. Experience that I actually had with my mom in the car one time when I was probably in middle school. We're riding in the car and she starts singing, Give Me the Beat, Boys, and Free My Soul. Want to Get Lost in Your Rock and Roll. I don't know the actual title of that song, but I know the song. Anyways, she starts singing that. The radio's not on. There's no radio on in the car, but she starts singing that. And she turns on the radio just impulsively while she's singing it. And that song is playing right where she's singing. Similar but different experience. Cool, not creepy. This story, though, creepy. Very creepy. I like it, but it's creepy. So, very fitting in the paranormal, I would say, especially because it's like an object I haven't seen in years and it's laying on the floor open, teeth strewn about. And the whole thing about the dog probably didn't grab it out. But I know if it were my dogs and those little bones, because that's what teeth are, they're little bones in your mouth. If those little bones were just hanging out on the floor, they'd probably eat them. I mean, they're bones. This next one comes to us from our Creepy Encounters by user Deep and Hidden WV. The title is Heavy Breathing. Sounds like me when I'm catching my breath between reading things. I try to edit that stuff out, but I know I miss so much of it. I'm sorry. Anyways. My mom used to get these scary phone calls at night. It was always when my dad was away for work, like the caller knew he was gone. The first time he called, I answered the phone. All I heard at first was heavy breathing. Then, as I was about to hang up, a deep voice told me to put my mom on the phone. It scared me. The voice was deep and guttural, almost a growl. I ran and got her, scared to death. Naturally, she was upset someone was calling after 8 p.m., which was a no-no in my house. Since everyone knew this, she thought it might be about my dad, who was in the Air Force. He was out on assignment and wasn't allowed to say where he was going or what he was doing. So she took the first of many calls, and here's how it went. My mom. Hello? Caller. Heavy breathing. Mom. Who is this? Caller. You want to find out? Mom. This isn't funny. I'm hanging up now. Don't call back. Click. Ring, ring. The phone rings again. Mom. Hello? Caller. I can see you. Mom. Oh, yeah? Tell me what I'm wearing then. Caller. You're wearing a black t-shirt and white underwear with black stripes. Mom. I'm calling the cops. Click. She calls the cops. 911. What's your emergency? Mom. Yes, there's a strange man who keeps calling us. He said he could see me and even told me what I'm wearing. He even told me what my underwear looked like. I have 3 young kids at home and my husband is away in the Air Force. Can you please send an officer over quick? 911. Of course, ma'am. Make sure all the windows and doors are locked until a unit can get there, please, and stay away from them unless the officers are there. Mom, thank you. Click. We all make sure everything is closed and locked. Ring, ring. The phone rings again. Mom. Hello? Caller. The cops won't be able to help you. No one can help you. You're mine. Mom. No, I am most certainly not yours, you psycho, so stop calling me. Click. Ring, ring. The phone rings again. Ring, ring. It rings again. We did not answer again that night. The next day, we had our phone number changed. It still didn't stop him. It got worse and worse to the point we didn't even leave the house much, and the phone was off the hook except for a scheduled random time my dad would pick to call every day if he was away. Then someone saw him. We never did, but the teenage boy in our neighborhood saw a man climbing the telephone pole that was 3 houses away and almost diagonal to ours. That's why he knew who we called and how he could see us. He was tapping the phone and calling from that line. When he was found and the teenage boy chased him because they knew of our situation, the caller never called back. But 2 years later, on America's Most Wanted, a woman with kids fitting the description of my mother was found raped and murdered. Her kids, family, and friends all said that she had been getting strange calls from a man she couldn't keep from calling her, even though she changed her phone number 8 times in a year, and that he knew everything about her and her family and what they wore and who they talked to, and even when her husband was out of town, which was the only time she got the calls. My mother called the tip line. We still don't know if they ever caught him. Okay, that's the end of the story. I don't like this one because it's real. It's real people fucking with people and obviously raping and murdering people. I don't like that one bit. Obviously because it's bad, but it's the approach is so creepy. I don't like it. It's why I put the story in here, because I want to have those ghost stories. I want to have the spooky, unexplainable stuff. And this is just a reminder that, yeah, ghosts are spooky. I don't like being spooked. But humans are fucking monsters. So, in this situation, I think the original poster, OP, is very fortunate to have made it out. So is their mom. I'm grateful that they did. Who knows if this person was connected, but the similarities between their experience and the outcome of somebody else's experience is pretty telling that it's very likely that it was the same person. But yeah, no, not fond of this one at all. Thank you for sharing, though. user Deep and Hidden WV. This next one is a precursor to one that follows, that I think they kind of relate in some way. So this next one is from R High Strangeness by user Trick Address 2884. The title is The Most Unsettling Thing to Ever Happen to Me. Sorry if this isn't the right place for this, but to me it seems like the perfect place. This happened a few years ago. Me and a friend were using some public Wi-Fi outside of a building doing nothing notable. But I could start to hear rock music coming from the distance, deep in the fields we were overlooking, perhaps hidden by the trees or something. At first, my friend couldn't hear it, but the noise grew louder and he eventually did. We both thought nothing of it until it got louder at the point that we decided to search for it in hopes of it maybe being a party or something. We began making our way down a path leading in the direction of the noise. Dense bushes enclosed the path either side. We must have been walking for less than 2 minutes before we realized it was coming from the bush on our left. At first we were confused, as it's so dense it would be very difficult for a single person to get there, let alone a party, as we were hoping. We were facing the bush, peering in, trying to see what the source of the music was, but it somehow seemed the same volume as before. This was until it started coming closer towards us, getting louder, which initially freaked us out a bit. But what was more horrible and why it was so unsettling was how it was so literally right in front of our faces. Just music. No source whatsoever. The longer we stayed to investigate, the creepier it became. And naturally, we sprinted off. One thing that stands out the most to both of us is how the sound approached us. The sound itself seemed intelligent. If anyone has any similar experience, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so keep this one in mind. Don't like this story because of I don't like this. I don't like disembodied music. I don't care if it's rock and roll. I will point out that in the comments of this section of this story's comment section, there were questions like, what was the song? Do you recognize the song? And they said no, they don't recognize the song. From what they recall, didn't sound like anything mainstream. So the next story is by user Creatrix_B, who can be found on Instagram. She asked that I share that. And how it relates to the previous story is it's a similar experience, I would say. And the title is Strange Song from the Forest. A couple of years ago, I lived with my parents still in a very small town that consisted of only a gas station, post office, and a church, and many farm homes. It's a small town about 30 minutes from a military base. My parents' home is about a mile down a gravel road from the main highway, and only a mile from the center of the town where this church, gas station, and post office are. One night, we are hanging out on the front deck while my little sister and her friends get some senior photos done in the front yard. Seeing as we have about 2 acres of yard, and we're kind of in a bowl surrounded by woods, it's a beautiful place to take photos. It's about the golden hour, which is right before the sun goes down, and it kind of starts to get that little cloudy, like a storm is rolling in feeling, but everyone is still outside hanging out nonetheless. But as time goes on, it looks as if the storm is building up and it's getting pretty windy. So we rush over and help the photographer and the girls gather up all of the equipment and props they were using to take photos. And by this time, it's starting to get dark anyways. Well, it starts raining a little and the wind is picking up a bit. So all of the girls run inside, as does the photographer with the camera and whatever equipment they could carry. But leaving a framed backdrop outside that me and my mother told them we would take down and put up in the rain so everyone else could get inside. So as me and my mom are struggling to disassemble the frame from the backdrop while getting a little wet in the rain, we hear a faint sound through the woods. sounds almost like music, which wasn't very odd because right through the woods about a mile away was the highway, and right across the highway was the church. So it wasn't very strange that we would hear music or singing in that direction. So here we are getting the frame and the backdrop packed up and thrown onto the front porch. And from the first time we heard the singing or music, it was only 10 seconds and then it was gone. But then we heard it again. And once again, we don't think much of it. And we're still going into the yard to grab any other random things that were left out there, like stools, shoes, whatever. And then another 10 seconds goes by, and once again we hear the singing, which by now is a little bit louder, and we can now tell it is in fact singing. And it's the same 4 to 6 notes over and over again. It's like someone singing a short tune, but only it sounds like similar to the Little Mermaid. You know the song. So at first, like I said, it was so faint and sounded so far away, we really thought it was the church. But at the end of the last note, it would restart back over to the first note, and this time it would be louder. So every time the tune would restart, it was getting louder, as if it was closer. By now, we're still finishing the packing up of the yard and completely mesmerized by what we are hearing. This tune getting louder and closer. To give you a visual, we were standing by the garage facing into the yard, which is about an acre long, and look out toward the tree line, which through this tree line is where the church is. So it's almost dark, but still light enough to see through the tree line, and this tune is getting louder, slowly getting closer. But at this point, it definitely sounds like it's coming from the forest, not the church. So me and my mom start talking about how there's probably people in the forest chanting this song or something, because where we live, there's been reports of cult activity in the woods. So naturally, this is both of our first thought. If it isn't the church, then it's got to be the cult. But it doesn't sound like a group of people. It doesn't sound like 20 different voices coming together, harmonizing. It just sounds like one person. But it doesn't sound male or female. That's the weird part. But it almost sounds like the one person was cloned 20 times, singing in the same voice, harmonizing this tune. And that's what the most creepy feeling was about it all. So here we are, almost paralyzed, staring at the tree line as this Ariel-esque singing goes on over and over again, louder and louder, closer and closer. And then it sounds as if this one person cloned 20 times is at the edge of the tree line, singing there. I don't see anyone. There's no sign of anyone physically there. But this tune is just blaring out from the edge of the tree line. And of course, as this last note ends, it starts back over to the beginning and is even louder. And it's surrounding us, coming from all directions. And no longer are we paralyzed. My mom and I are in fear. We both look at each other and sprint to the front door and shut it and lock behind us. Both in the kitchen, now breathing heavy, looking at each other, trying to understand what it is we just experienced. We are completely and entirely frightened and almost amazed. We both heard the same thing, the exact same thing. Neither male nor female singing voice, cloned 20 times over, harmonizing, singing the same 4 notes over and over. I haven't come across another person's experience that could even come close to what we heard. It's like whatever we heard, whenever this comes up in my mind again, I can't find anything. Nothing that explains what we heard. So, hoping that maybe someone could explain this, figured I'd reach out here. So, I kind of paraphrased a little throughout that because it seems like this did go on a long time for the experience that they had. I mean, if it's happening every 10 seconds, it only takes a few minutes for them to have heard it several times, but it sounds like it went on longer than a few minutes. So, I I don't like it. I don't like unexplainable things coming from the woods. I love camping. If you listen to previous episodes, you know I love camping. But the stuff I've been reading to put together this episode makes me so scared to go camping again. And there's another story that follows those last two. They're all separate stories, but is similar. This one was posted in our paranormal by user --Salem --. And the title is Singing in the Forest. I live in a rural but not isolated area in the Midwest. My window is up against the forest, which is about 50 or 60 feet away from the tree line. My window is about 20 or so feet above ground level. I heard what I am convinced was a low, echoing, humming-like song from the woods. I have heard turkey, coyote, fox, deer, squirrel, and so on before. Their cries, calls, and barks. This was none of those. As I laid there in bed, as I began to concentrate on the sound, I couldn't shake the mental conclusion of a woman singing. The sound persisted for about 15 to 20 seconds, then stopped, but not suddenly. About a minute or two later, it picked back up again. This continued a few more times before it stopped. The sound was distant, not quite deep into the woods, but not at the tree line. There's a small unit of deer that sometimes sleep in a clearing in the woods around that area, but they haven't been there in a few weeks. Some context, I am very much a late night person. I used to work the graveyard shifts due to my ability to stay alert so long into the night. This is how I know what all these common and uncommon woodland creatures sound like, and no, I did not look outside my window. My thought process was, if I can't identify it, don't look for it. I still think I was right to not seek out an answer immediately. Additionally, the song was very clear. And then there's an edit. Thanks for the interest in the suggestions. I made a short post about the additional information to some common questions. I've read everyone's posts from mountain lions, personal stories, stick Indians, banshees, and fairies. While I wish I could answer all of your questions, I don't think I have that much information. If anyone has any more experiences or ideas to share, I will happily read them. And I didn't pull all those items, but yeah, the suggestions of the banshee, which is similar to a siren in a different way. Don't like that. Don't know what stick Indians are. Mountain lions, I know what a mountain lion is. And I do know, and I've heard plenty about how the disturbing sounds you hear in the woods, it can sometimes be explained by mountain lions or larger cats, because cats make some pretty freaking weird sounds. So do foxes. Some of the suggestions were that maybe it was a wounded animal, but I don't know. It's weird to imagine a wounded animal being perceived as a song that is spread out what seems to be fairly evenly across a couple minutes here and there. I don't know. And one of the other comments was that the OP for this story was very smart for not looking out the window. And I think that goes on to say about the banshee. You know, you don't want to look at a banshee because it means death, possibly for you. All right, this next one, I don't know if I want to read it, but okay. This one is on The Truth Is Here by user Ingenious7. And the title is Something Attacked Us When I Was a Kid. When I was a kid, my parents and I lived in a small mobile home on a plot that was across the street from the local cemetery. Although I don't remember much about living there, my parents and other family members have told me the stories. I do remember my dad and mom arguing in the middle of the night one time. I remember my dad asking my mom, "Why are you washing clothes at this hour at night?" My mom arguing back that she wasn't, but we could hear the washer and dryer running. I remember coming home and my parents freaking out because all the cabinets and drawers were open. They assumed someone broke into the house, but nothing was ever missing. I do remember one night multiple shadows entering my room and standing over my bed. I'm going to be going to bed shortly after this, so I'm not excited about this. I remember thinking it was my mom until moments later the lights turned on and my mom walked in to check on me. I was so freaked out that I never slept in my own bed again until I was about 9 years old. There's a scene in that movie, The Fourth Kind, that made me have a breakdown because it felt like a flashback. These are the things I do remember. So we're not even into the story yet. The rest of the story was told to me by my parents, grandparents, church pastor, and with a police report. One night, my parents were outside having a few drinks, and I was inside watching the TV. I must have been around 5 or 6 years old. Suddenly, my parents hear me crying in pain and ran into the house to see what was happening. They saw me hurtled over, crying and screaming. My mom ran to me and started asking me what was wrong. She then lifted my shirt to see if something was biting me. There was nothing, but my skin was being pulled in pinches as if it were rubber. My parents were panicked and ran to get the phone to call for help. The moment my dad reached for the phone, the pinching stopped and the front door slammed open as if something had just ran out. My dad then ran outside to see if he could see anything, but nothing was there. Suddenly, he started hearing a sort of growling coming from under the mobile home. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop. I'm going to try to stop having reactions to everything, but it's when we get into this territory that's almost like demonic that I don't like it. When he looked, all he could see were some red. Oh, no. I'm going to read this again. When he looked, all he could see were some red, bloodshot eyes staring at him and growling. Growling? Growing. I don't know. Either or. I don't like red eyes. I don't like when they grow, and I don't like when they growl. My dad, in a complete panic, pulled out his gun and started shooting at whatever it was. Okay, Dad's got a gun. Dad's got a gun right on him. Okay. This caught the attention of a police officer who pulled up in front of the house and pulled his gun out to my dad. My dad quickly dropped his gun and told the officer, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but something just attacked my son and it's under the trailer." Before the officer could even look, a creature jumped out from under the mobile home, jumped the fence, and started running. The police officer jumped back into his car and started chasing it. At this point, my parents were completely frightened. Since they had no car at the time, they called a friend of my dad and asked them for a ride to my grandparents. Once the friend got there, my dad loaded us into the car and was getting ready to leave when the police officer returned. The police officer told my parents, "I followed that thing for about a half a mile and it just vanished. I don't know what it was, but I suggest you leave the area for the time being in case it returns." My mom said she had never heard a police officer sound so terrified in her life. Yeah. You know what? I don't like that. Oh, the story's not even over. So I don't know why I'm talking about it yet. As we were driving down the road, my dad's friend looks at the rearview mirror and asks my parents, "Hey, no. Oh my God." Okay, I have to preface that I skimmed a lot of these stories, so I'm reading a lot of these for the first time. Okay. As we were driving down the road, my dad's friend looks at the rearview mirror and asks my parents, "Hey, do you guys see that thing running after us? What the fuck is that thing?" At that point, the truck jumped as if something had just landed in the cargo bed. I'm going to throw up on the mic. My mom started yelling in pain as the back of her hand was being pinched and pulled, just as my skin had been earlier. This continued until my parents reached my grandparents' property. Oh, fuck this. It's not even done. I'm not even done reading the story. Okay. Now, my grandparents have always been super religious. They're one of the founding members of their church and used to host Sunday Mass at their home before the church had enough saved up to buy a building. Fable, where are you? Come here. Stay close to me. The moment my mom walked into the front gate, the pinching and pulling stopped. My parents ran into my grandparents' home screaming and crying. My grandparents automatically assumed that my parents were either drunk or on some kind of drug, but once they saw the look in all of our eyes, they decided to call the pastor immediately. As soon as the pastor arrived, her first words were, "I don't know what is going on, and I don't want to panic you, but I feel something extremely hostile right outside of this house." That's the pastor saying that. Oh, why? They immediately started praying. My mom says she opened her eyes during the first prayer and looked outside and could see red, bloodshot eyes staring into the house. Oh, God. Oh, man. No. That night, my mom also claimed that during the middle of the night, she awoke and heard 3 knocks on the window. She said she could see outside the window a tall creature walking back and forth right outside the gate, saying how she thought it was odd, almost as if the creature couldn't enter the property. After that night, things apparently calmed down and nothing really weird happened in the trailer again. Although my parents did move out a few months later. I don't fucking blame them. I would have moved out that night. I would have never gone back to that. I don't care what's in that trailer. I don't need it. I don't need it. But even the renters and people who now live there claim nothing has happened to them. I'm so glad. You know. Why? But something is definitely there, and it remembers us. My parents have drove past one night and saw 3 dogs jump from out of the cemetery and perch themselves like birds on the fence watching their car drive by. Fuck that. I had my first ever car accident on the same street in front of the cemetery too. I suddenly lost control of my car and crashed into a gas pipe. My grandmother has since passed and was buried in that cemetery, and since then, nothing has happened. I like to think that she's putting those creatures in their place, acting as my guardian angel. Yeah, you know, I hope she is for all of our sakes, because I don't fucking like that story at all. Don't like it. Not at all. I don't know what to make of it. The red eyes, growling, pinching. Why? Why is it pinching? Ugh. It's better than like scratching or biting, but why? Why is it pinching? Why is it so dead set? Why did it chase the truck? Ew. Ugh, I want to throw up at the thought of it chasing the truck. I like horror movies and horror novels. I like horror video games. It's just these like supposedly real stories that really ruin my time. They ruin my time. And that's where we're going to end tonight on this frightful night. I do hope that you got what you were looking for when tuning into this podcast. I know I'm not happy about any of it. Okay, let's talk again about that, the high heels ghost from the nursery, the nursing home. I loved that story. That was a good story, wasn't it, guys? Let's forget all the other stories. Let's just talk about that one for another minute. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. That woman finding peace and getting exactly what she wanted, to be able to wear her high heels and go to the next plane. So happy for her. I want to thank everybody for giving me permission to read their stories. And I want to thank the people that didn't give me permission, but also didn't not give me permission. It's a public site, right? Like I can read it still, I think. Anyways, hopefully your Halloween was good or is good. Hopefully you've enjoyed this spooky time of year, and this podcast has enhanced it. A podcast normally dedicated to sharing music, art, books, and beyond. This is probably considered beyond. Nonetheless, be sure to tune in next week when we talk with John Moods. John Moods is a musician out of Berlin, making some music that harkens to the 80s, somewhat 70s, modern twist on it all. Love his music. We have an awesome chat, get all sorts of philosophical, and it's a great conversation, especially for what's coming up, because we talk a lot about the philosophy of just humans and humans being polarized. And right now, as we're more polarized than ever, primarily in the U.S., with an election next week. And I'd like to remind you that as a U.S. citizen, you got to vote, because that's really the scariest thing that we have to worry about right now is voting and the outcome of this election. So make sure to use your rights as they were given to you from our forefathers with their, congregation, the Congress of forefathers, to give us all the right to vote. Those in favor say yay, and those say nay. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just saying you got to get out there and vote next week if you haven't already. If you haven't mailed in, you can't mail in now. It's too late. You got to go in. You can do a drop box. Depends where you're at, I guess. Some states are later, but if you haven't voted early or mailed in your ballot, make sure you go to the polls. And I don't know how it works everywhere else. I'm pretty sure Michigan is officially a state where you can register to vote the same day. So if you forgot, same day registration may apply to you. I'm not sure if that's only for midterms or what. I don't know how it all works. Anyways, please vote. This has been Cody Buchanan. My pants are officially spooked off. I'm tired, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more with you next time. If you liked this episode and you want more episodes that are more of just a discussion, story sharing, or just covers a topic, I wouldn't mind mixing that in. I'd probably make them shorter than this one. This one, at least as far as the recording goes, is almost 2.5 hours. I've probably trimmed it by the time you're listening to this. So I do plan to make sure I keep things shorter. But yeah, let me know. Follow Nonethelesser on Instagram. Tune in there for some socializing and updates on what's to come. Leave a review on iTunes. I think people still do that. I've been told that you should do that for podcasts. You can follow on Spotify if you haven't already. I don't have notifications on my Spotify, so if you don't like getting like pings about, new episodes, I get it. You can turn off notifications. But otherwise, if you leave them on, you'll be notified when a new episode comes up. And then you can jump right in. And I would greatly appreciate that. But anyways, thank you and have a spooky